So welcome back, everybody, and thanks for joining me for the Financial Advisor Marketing Bootcamp and Challenge. In particular, welcome to this second session of the webinar challenge, where we help you to get towards putting together and putting on your first client webinar. So we're not going to waste any time. Let's get straight stuck in. So here we are, and let's have a quick recap on where we left off last time. As I said, this is session 2, and hopefully the first session gave you a good outline of the direction of travel that we're taking. So a summary of why we should be doing webinars. I'm not going to go through all of these because they really speak for themselves. But if you really commit yourself to client webinars, webinar marketing, it can be incredibly powerful. And it's quite often said that if you really commit yourself to webinar marketing, you can literally do all the marketing you'll ever want to do in your business in literally 1 quarter every single year, or even one hour a quarter, or even an hour a week, half an hour a week. Once you've committed yourself to it, this stuff just works, and it works to attract new clients, but it is particularly good at adding value to existing clients and other relationships that you have in your business. It's ridiculously cheap to do. As you probably know, I'm a huge advocate of putting on seminars. Now, right now, we can't put on seminars, although they will come back, no question about it. But by putting on a webinar, you don't have all associated costs that normally come with putting on a seminar. You don't have to go anywhere. You can do it from your office or from your home, wherever you want to do it. You speak for one-to-many, and one-to-many is really powerful. It is a marketing approach that is really scalable. There are a lot of businesses who can, if they're looking for new leads or new inquiries, they can just turn them on and turn them off or slow them down a bit simply by the frequency that they put on webinars. By definition, the right people tend to turn up, particularly if they're to your existing clients. They're getting value from you, an expert, a subject expert. It helps you to build relationships with other experts if you invite them to come and join you on your webinar. And I think this is a really important one. Webinars are not just a marketing tool. Once you really get into the swing of it, get into the habit of it, it actually becomes an asset of your business. It becomes part of your overall proposition. Obviously, it establishes your authority and credibility, a great deal of trust, just like putting on a seminar. People get to see the whites of your eyes. It builds trust. It's really engaging. Any kind of marketing that actually engages people on a regular basis is extraordinarily powerful. Enhances your brand value. You've got a strong source, not a string source of quality leads, and it builds long-term relationships. And for most people attending a webinar, there is a natural next step of things that they're going to do. So your homework from the previous session was to actually put a date in the diary. Yep, be that bold, stick a date in the diary. I'd suggest 2 to 3 months time, something like that. But once you've got this first one out of the way, you can get some processes in place. You can learn about the mistakes that you make along the way, and these things just get better and better until you've got a process that you just follow every single time. You hopefully will have decided who you're going to target, and that could be as simple as your existing clients, and you'll have done a little bit of thought around what sort of topic are you going to talk about. So hopefully you've had time to do that. If you have any questions, just get in touch. It's as simple as that. A quick reminder of why and where webinars sit in the overall marketing arena for financial advisors. And if you look at the different types of marketing that works for different types of advisors, so on the left, top strategies for top performing advisors, webinars are right up there. And also as a low risk strategy for new advisors or advisors who perhaps, excuse me, struggling a little, webinars are really powerful there. As I said, they're pretty low risk, to be quite honest, in terms of marketing and cost. Well, there is no cost other than your time. Something that's really important, and you hopefully will remember the little Gordon's Gin booklet that I mentioned in the first session, which was a marketing tool. This is 100 years old, a little book full of cocktail recipes. It was designed to add value to existing customers of Gordon's Gin, but also to attract new customers as well. And this kind of educational marketing ticks a lot of boxes. In fact, it ticks more boxes than seminars. It ticks more boxes than writing your own books. So webinars are really, really powerful, and they're proven on multiple different levels to be effective. Webinars also sit really nicely on a financial advisor's value ladder, and you'll hopefully have noticed in this particular challenge and other marketing challenges that I put out there, creating your value ladder is something that's really, really important. It is still a relatively new concept in the world of financial planning. The idea that we bring people into our world and we slowly but surely give them value in the shape of freebies or very, very low cost but very, very high value activities that we offer. Now, I wouldn't suggest that a financial advisor includes all of these things in their value ladder, but certainly I would be recommending that you have your own tips books, your own e-guides. Certainly I'd recommend you have your own webinar, seminars in due course as well. And these are the things that attract people into your world, so they get to know you, get to like you, start building trust, so it becomes more likely that they will stay with you over the long term and may even spend more money with you on associated products and services that you've actually created around your financial planning expertise. Just a quick couple of examples, just to recap. Value ladder for a dentist, typically, more and more dentists do that these days. They offer free teeth cleaning or free teeth whitening just to get you in the building so they can treat you really well, maybe get some testimonials, so that it becomes much more likely that you'll go on to pay for maybe cosmetic work in due course. Value ladder for a chiropractor, similar, get people in, free consultation, free massages. What they really want you to do is to take out an ongoing care plan and maybe to go on their weekend wellness retreat as well. So I've got a bit of a webinar timeline which you might want to follow in terms of how you put this thing together. And it starts with your planning meeting. You may already have had your planning meeting, perhaps around the homework that you've just done, but typically the timeline starts with a planning meeting. Who's going to work on this with you? Is it going to be somebody in your team? Are you going to outsource some of the work to somebody else as well? That planning meeting is going to be thinking about assigning roles, deciding on your goals for, we're going to go into these in a bit more detail, your goals for this whole initiative. What are you going to talk about in either your one-off webinar or in your ongoing regular webinars? Who's going to be the audience, and getting the technology right. The technology is actually the easy bit, to be quite honest. Next stage in the timeline is actually scheduling the date. Well, I've actually skipped that one because I've already asked you to do that. And the reason I asked you to schedule a date in the diary is it just makes it more likely that you'll actually do it if you get the date in the diary now. If we don't put a date in the diary now, we can come up with all manner of excuses not to put in the work to make this thing happen. And that date will just get further and further away, and it may never happen at all. So it's really important that you get a date in the diary and try to stick to that as best you can. Next thing in the timeline, start thinking about how you're going to market and promote this. Invitation planning. Who do you want to attend? How we're going to promote this to them. We're going to go into a bit more detail on that. The next stage in the timeline comes down to the presentation development. So you've decided your topic. You're going to now thinking about, well, what style, what approach, what model are we going to adopt? And we're going to cover that in just a minute or two as well. Next stage in the timeline is we're now promoting this thing. We're taking registrations as well. So we need to be thinking about how we're actually going to go about doing that, what sort of data we're going to be looking for as well. Next stage, we're getting close to the date now. We need to have a practice session. Ideally, we need to have 2 practice sessions. So do that with your team, a couple of colleagues maybe, or with a couple of friends. Maybe even try it out on a couple of really close long-term clients. Go to your clients and say, look, we're doing this webinar series now, or we're doing a one-off. Just love to get some feedback from you on what you think. So actually involve them and do a practice session. Remember, this thing's not going to be 2 hours long or anything like that. Really, we're looking at something maximum of 45 minutes, unless you've got other ideas, which mean the thing's going to be longer. So 20 minutes to 45, maybe an hour long. That's the absolute maximum that you're going to want. So it's not going to take up too much of their time or your time. Then we have the day of the webinar, the go live date, and the next thing on the timeline is the post-event follow-up, which is really important. We're not going to cover the post-event follow-up today, but we're just going to go into a bit more detail on some of these things in the webinar timeline. So first thing, at that early meeting, we need to be thinking about what are our objectives for this. And you may remember from the first session, we need to have 2 objectives, and it's critically important that you do this. And that means getting a piece of paper and writing down, why am I doing this? What am I aiming to achieve? And also, what do I want the attendees to my webinar to do afterwards? If you can get those really clear in your mind, then your whole planning, your whole focus, and the delivery will be so much more effective. I promise you, if the main goal of your webinar is to attract more clients, you will find that your whole focus is followed through, and it even comes through in the actual presentation itself on the day. So you must have 2 clear objectives, and they must be written down as well. So in terms of putting your team together, I mentioned that a second or 2 ago, it's entirely possible to do this whole thing by yourself. I do all of mine by myself, and it really doesn't take up much time at all. But in the meantime, you've got a business to run, you've got clients to see, so you might want to get some helpers. So maybe your assistant, anyone else in your business, or as I said, you could outsource this as well. Who's going to be the organizer? You also need to be thinking about who's going to be the presenter or presenters. Maybe there's going to be more than one of you. And you need somebody to generally help you. So for example, one area an assistant can be is to help with the tech on the day. Maybe people are asking questions, and while you're doing your presentation, you don't really want to be distracted by questions that are coming in. Maybe you can get someone else to take those and to highlight the ones that maybe you should be answering as well. So it all goes a bit more smooth if you can actually get a little bit of help with this. So put a little team together, and as I said, it's fine if that team is just you. Just got a bit more work to do. So goals and objectives. What could your goals and objectives be? They could be a variety of different things. Pick from any of these, okay? The objective for your webinars could be just to add value to your existing clients, yeah? Or to add value and strengthen relationships with professional connections as well. So an added value type of model would imply that you're going to do this on a reasonably regular basis. Yes, you can do them every week, maybe once every couple of weeks or once a month. Less frequent than once a month, I wouldn't really class as regular, to be quite honest. So I'd be thinking weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. Building your brand, putting your webinar together. As I said, this is part of your proposition now. It's not just a marketing tool. So your webinar series could be branded up, give it a logo, give it a nice strapline, something like that. It does help to build your brand. And it's something you can show off on your other marketing materials as well. Show it off on your website. Have a dedicated page on your website. Mention it in your LinkedIn profile in a variety of different sections as well. If you have any marketing literature as well that you send out, maybe you've got a nice brochure that you send out to prospects or to clients, include it in there as well. Mention it in your social media. So it becomes part of everything you do. Another goal or objective for your webinar could be just to grow or enhance the perception of your expertise, your credibility, and your authority. And, like writing a book, like writing a blog, like having a podcast, like writing articles, all of these things add to the perception that you are credible and that you're an expert as well. Although webinars can potentially attract anybody from anywhere, they really are great for raising local profile as well. And one of the things I would recommend you do when you start promoting this thing is to send out a press release to local magazines, local newspapers, local radio stations, just to get some local credibility built up as well. Most financial advisors I know, they really like working with local people, local businesses. And just because we have the internet, which means we could do business with anybody, anywhere, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to do that. So give it a local slant. I mean, I know one financial advisor who does a webinar, and basically his webinars are interviews with local business people. There's an idea for you straight away. And so interviews with local business people, that attracts local viewers, local listeners as well. So it's a great way to raise your profile locally. Interaction with clients. In another webinar I'm doing, I'm talking about the importance of regular interaction with clients. In particular, regular interaction with the people who are not yet clients, but they're prospects. You know, it's said that we really need to have 7 or more touch points with a prospect before they actually decide to come on board with us. So a webinar is a great way to interact with people on a regular basis. And you know, there may well be some people who are on your mailing list, but they're not yet clients, or maybe they're people who've approached you and you know, they're not necessarily the right clients for you just yet. But this is a great way of keeping those relationship plates spinning. And if you do that, yes, they may want to come on and be a client in due course, but what's more likely to happen is they will refer you to their friends and colleagues as well. So it's a great way to interact with clients. I already mentioned that a good goal will be as a way to add and build relationships with your professional introducers. And you don't have to do a separate webinar for your professional introducers, although you can. There's no reason why not. When you put on a webinar, depending on your goals for the thing, you know, bring your local introducers on board as well. Or invite local journalists to come on board as well. A key goal for many people in many businesses to run webinars is purely to attract clients. That's fine in financial planning, particularly in UK financial planning, but from looking at the industry, knowing the profession as I do, I think most financial planners will get most value by offering their webinar to their existing clients. But there's no earthly reason why, as part of your marketing and promotion, you can't suggest to your existing clients, look, you're invited to our webinar. It would be great if you could invite a friend, invite a relative, invite a colleague as well, and maybe even incentivize them for doing that as well. So webinars are not just about attracting clients. They are very good at doing that. Proven time and time to be very good at doing that. But my belief is that you'll find that more value in actually adding value to existing clients, but that in itself will bring more of the right type of clients on board as well. And also another goal and objective is actually to come up with a call to action. What do you want them to do afterwards as a result of watching it? Now, it may well be that you don't want them to do anything afterwards other than perhaps refer, but I would always have in the back of your mind that a key goal in your webinars, albeit to existing clients, is to actually get them to take some sort of action as well. Now, you may say something in your webinar which may prompt some thinking, and it's something they actually do need further advice and guidance and planning from you. But what's more likely to happen is that they will refer somebody else. So you should include that as part of the goals for your webinar. Goals for attendees, here we go. Take some sort of action, yeah? Contact us, refer us, give us a testimonial. So a nice thing to do after you've done your webinar is, and you know, if you've only got 5 people, 10 people, don't think that that's a bad thing. Webinars do not have to have several hundred people on them. If your goal is to have 5 people on your webinar, fantastic. But what I would do after the webinar is get in touch with every single one of them, phone them up. Say, how did it go for you? What did we do well? What did we not do so well? What would you have liked to have heard? What would you like to hear in future webinars? And ask one or two of them, look, would you be willing to just speak on camera and give us a quick video, a bit of feedback, because that will help you to market and promote future ones. Who should you invite? I've already touched on this, but let's spell it out. Existing clients, okay? Go for your existing clients first. Because they will get most value from this, and if they enjoy it over time, it will become part of their day, it will become part of their regular routine, and it's, you know, super powerful. Think about your prospects. Do you have people on your mailing list? Do you want to put on a webinar specifically to attract new prospects? Introducers we've already mentioned as well. You can lump them all into the same webinar. Nothing wrong with doing that. It works with seminars. You know, the most successful seminar host amongst financial planners that I've ever seen, he when he used to put on seminars, he used to try and get a third of the audience would be existing clients, another third of the audience would be people who just responded to his advertising, and the remaining third of the audience would be professional introducers, general hangers-on, local journalists, movers and shakers and people like that. And he always said that was the golden three that worked time and time again. Anybody else who you think, and how many people do you want to invite? Well, it's entirely up to you. As I said, 5 is absolutely fine. It doesn't matter. 20 is not necessarily better than 5. It's better that you have 5 people on board and they have a great experience, so they want to refer people and talk to you afterwards. So don't get hung up on the numbers on this, okay? The topic, when you're thinking about, when you're having that meeting, what are we going to talk about? Be guided by who's attending. If your clients tend to be young entrepreneurs, then that will guide you in terms of the topic that you want to be talking about. Yeah, and maybe the guest speakers that you might want to bring on board as well. It is always a good idea to ask your clients and ask your potential audience simple questions. You know, we're thinking of putting on a webinar series. These are the topics that we're thinking about putting on. Which of those do you think would work well for you? I do this all the time. And what usually happens is I come up with a list of topics that I think financial advisors are going to want to hear about on a webinar. And usually they pick the one that I was least expecting them to go for. So be guided by your audience. I mean, I'm assuming as financial advisors, you do a regular client survey, if not an annual client survey, a half yearly one, and some financial advisors even do a quarterly client survey as well. Use a tool like SurveyMonkey or something like that, or even phone people up, you know, and do it that way as well. Incentivize people to take your survey. So as part of your regular surveying of clients, ask them what you think that they would like to hear about. Typically also your topic will be guided by and determined by what you know the pain points and the challenges are and the worries and concerns that you know your clients have. Yeah, those are always great things to focus on. If you know that you've got a particular type of client and you want more of those types of people, the very fact that you work with this particular type of client means that you will know what their worries are, what their financial concerns are. And so focus on those for your topic when you're putting that together for your webinar. Weekly updates, monthly updates. You'll remember in the first session I was talking about the financial advisor who does every Monday morning at 10 o'clock. He does a 20-minute review of the personal finance pages of the weekend press. That's a kind of update. It's a super simple format. It works really, really well. So that's a good format as well. Doesn't take much thinking about and doesn't take too much work either. If you're doing a one-off webinar, they're quite special one-offs, so they really need a lot of research to get them right. The regular webinars, actually, they're much easier. Ironically, they're easier to put together because you kind of get in a groove. You follow a format. So the one-off ones, they're a little bit harder to do, but no reason why you can't do them if you want to do it. And also, when you're doing your brainstorming around the topic, just come up with a working title for this thing. Don't come up with the actual title of the webinar. You know, it took me ages to come up with the Financial Advisor Marketing Bootcamp and Challenge. My working title was just Bootcamp. So just something, because as soon as you've got something written down, again, it gives you a bit more focus. You get a bit more excited about what's to come, and it starts to work well. So spend a bit of time putting your topic decision. And if you're going to do regular ones, maybe once a month, try and plan out a logical sequence of how this is going to go. Okay, the format, we touched on this last time, but I want to go over it again because this is the bit where a lot of people struggle on. As to, okay, so we've got our date in the diary, we've got an idea of what we're going to talk about. So how do we actually present it? What's the format? And there's a variety of different formats that you could choose from. You could do what I'm doing right now. Me, some slides, camera. Okay, you could do that. And typically your webinar will be live, although you can record it at the same time as well. And if you're worried about doing it live for the first time, then record your first one and put it out as if it was live. That's absolutely fine. So one speaker talking is absolutely fine. So the financial advisors who are doing the Monday morning review of the personal finance sections of the weekend press, that's going to be just you, and you're going to be holding up some actual newspapers. So you've got a bit of a cheeky prop going on there as well. The two speaker format, that works quite well as well. Maybe you want to get in a guest speaker, and we talked about this in the first session. And I use the example of Justin Urquhart Stewart. You know, lots of financial advisors get him into their seminars that they put on. So, you know, think about whether or not it's just you, but, you know, as to whether or not you have more than one speaker, that will be, you'll be guided by the topic that you're particularly covering. An interview style, that's a nice easy one to do as well. So you know, you've got two speakers, but you're interviewing them. You would typically, because it's a webinar, you would typically be doing this using Zoom or something like that. It's entirely up to you, but the interview style works really well. Do you remember I mentioned just a few minutes ago, if you want to keep it local, you could have a webinar where you interview local business people around certain challenges, yes, personal finance issues, if that's something you want to talk about, but the interview style can be done long distance as well, so it doesn't have to be done locally. Q&A session is a good one as well. So you could do a weekly webinar, which is you could call it the client Q&A, or a monthly version, client Q&A. And when you're promoting the thing, you actually say to them, our monthly Q&A is coming up. Think of some good questions that you want to ask us, and we'll answer them live on our webinar. Or you could make up some questions. A nice format that I see some webinar hosts doing is they literally make up some questions, and come the webinar, they pick up a piece of paper and they say, right, well, over the last week or the last month, I've had some questions from a couple of clients. Jane here from Reading, she's written in on an email. She said, can you tell me what my retirement planning options are given this particular scenario? So that's a really nice model as well. And it gives you an opportunity to talk about and come up with questions that you already know the answers to. So that's a nice model that you can do. Panel discussions are great, need a little bit more organization as well. I'm not a great fan of panel discussions, particularly in live events like seminars and conferences. I always think conferences tend to go a bit flat and a bit dead when they do the panel sessions. And that can happen too on webinars as well, but doesn't mean say it's not an option that you can't use if you feel that's the route for you. Interactive ones, that's a great thing to do. That works particularly well if you're doing case studies where you're doing the speaking, and you could maybe give some exercises for people to do, simple stuff. You can even do, and I'm picking on the last one there, case study or a demonstration. A great model to follow if you're doing live seminars is where you do live financial planning. And this is really good, and the financial advisors who are really successful and they get high conversion rates, in other words, people turn up for their seminar and then they get in touch with you afterwards and say, I really enjoyed your seminar, I'd love to work with you, how do we do that? One of the techniques that works really, really well is that as part of that seminar, you are doing some live financial planning. You could even do cash flow modeling. And the way you do that, as people register for your seminar, you get in touch with everybody who registered for your seminar. Hi, Mrs. Jones. Hi, Mr. Jones. Thanks very much for registering for our seminar. Really looking forward to meeting you on the day. We always like to do some case studies on the day, and we always like a couple of volunteers. Would you be interested in being a couple of volunteers? Now, most people say no, but there's always 2 or 3 people who say, yeah, I'd love to. So you do a bit of fact finding, you find out what issues they're facing, and you actually work with them and you call them out of the audience actually live on the day. And maybe some live cash flow modeling, maybe some live mortgage broking, whatever your target market is, whatever your audience is, whatever your topic that you're particularly focused on. And you could do that with webinars as well. So as people register for your webinar, you get in touch with every one of them, say thanks for registering. And this is a really good tip, and I'm actually going to come on to this as well. It's a really good and important thing to do. Get in touch with everybody who registers for your webinar. Say thanks so much. Looking forward to seeing you on the day. Hope you find it interesting. Why should you do that? Because it makes it more likely they'll actually turn up on the day. But also say, look, we like to do a couple of live case studies. Would you be interested in taking part in that? So what you've got there, a variety of different models. We're only limited by our own imaginations as to what sort of model we do. But those are typically the sort of models that work. Now, what you will have noticed here is none of the models that I'm talking about are the traditional webinars models that you may have attended in other industries. The traditional model is half an hour to an hour of content, followed by half an hour to an hour of selling. Okay, that's not really appropriate for UK financial planners, so that's why I've not put it in there. For the most part, financial planners in the UK, what we're looking to do is to educate and inform people at a level such that people say, I want to work with that financial advisor, or I want to continue working with that financial advisor, or I want to refer my friends to that financial advisor. So that, as some people call it, the American model, I'm not sure whether it is particularly American, but that's what some people call it, is not particularly appropriate for UK financial planners. But these models that you can see here are much more appropriate and work. Okay. You'll also need to be thinking about your visuals on the day. So part of this particular challenge is we just want to get you to the point where you're committed to doing this. So getting your visuals done won't necessarily be a priority in this particular challenge, but it is something that you will need to plan and think about at some particular point. So the visuals that you use will depend on the format that you do. As you can see in this particular webinar that I'm doing right now, it's me talking in a little box. And I'm showing you slides as well. So a straight PowerPoint share, but what you do, what you show to people, how you engage people does depend on the model that you're using. So you could do a straight PowerPoint share. You could do just a straight talking to camera. No reason why you can't do that. As I mentioned, the guys and girls doing the weekend newspaper review, it's a straight talk to camera, no slides needed. And your props are the newspapers that you're talking about there as well. If you're doing the interview format as well, again, you might just want some bookend slides just to welcome people, maybe to introduce other speakers, and maybe to finish the thing off at the end. It's entirely down to what you want to do as well. You might want, though, to have a visual with your agenda right at the beginning, and I showed you in the previous session a typical agenda. We will come back to that one another time. And also, as financial advisors, you may have some compliance issues. You might have to have a slide at the end that says whatever it has to say. You know, in any webinar, you're not giving financial advice. You're not giving financial promotions. No one wants that anyway. What you're really doing is educating and informing. So compliance really doesn't come into it when it comes to webinars, but either way, I would always talk to your compliance people and just get that signed off however they like it to be done. Okay. What platform? There are so many platforms, and I listed some out in the previous webinar. The most popular tend to be Zoom, GoToWebinar, and Webinar Jam. They all do much the same thing, but you know, my favorite is Zoom. Super easy to do. I'm doing this one right now on Zoom. It's not costing me a penny. But there is an add-on webinar module to Zoom, which costs about 30 quid a month, which gives you a bit more functionality if that's what you want to do. So the amount of functionality you need depends on the model of the webinar that you're actually going to present. Okay. And it might be determined by the maximum number of attendees. So some have a limit of 100 people, 300 people. If that's the sort of numbers you're going to go for, just be conscious of that some webinar platforms have got a limit on it, and you may have to pay whatever, but just look into it. But for most financial planners, I can't see any reason why Zoom isn't a viable option for you to use as well. And also depending on the platform, you may or not be able to record it. Although even if you can't record it, maybe the functionality doesn't include it, there's a variety of screen recording tools that you can use that will record your webinar for you as well. The schedule, just briefly, we ought to look at that. So you've got your planning period. Just to kind of recapping on what I was talking about right at the beginning. You've got your planning period. You need to be thinking about your formats and the model that you want to follow. If you have got other speakers involved as well, do build that into your schedule to liaise with your speakers with the best will in the world. When you're working with other speakers, that tends to throw a spanner in the works sometime. In other words, make sure they've got some deadlines to get, if they are using slides, make sure they have some deadlines so that you can actually have a practice run with their slides as well. Okay, you be in charge, or get your assistants to be in charge as well. Schedule in those practice sessions as well. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have a practice session, particularly for your very first one that you do as well. Okay, just so that you can iron out any creases in the planning. The simpler the model you've got, the less likely there will be, for most webinars, they'll go really easily, okay? But you just want to make sure that you've had a little practice go. And if nothing else, by running a practice session will give you a sense of how long the thing will be. What most people tend to find is if they've not had a practice session, it will go on for longer than you were planning. And if you said to your webinar attendees, this thing's going to go on for 45 minutes and it goes on for an hour, some of them will get uncomfortable with that. Some of them will leave early, and you don't want to do that. Okay. So for no other reason, practice the timing as well, and have a backup plan. Okay. Plan B. That could be as simple as recording your practice session or doing a dry run where you record it, so that if the technology does fall over on the day, you've got a ready-made recording. That's entirely up to you. It gives you more to do, but it's worth thinking about having a backup plan. Having a communication plan, so that if the thing does fall over 5 minutes before you're due to start, your backup plan includes a communication to all the people who registered and said, so that somebody can fire off an email to all the people who have registered and said, really sorry, the technology has failed us today, but we'll contact you again. Okay, you don't want people logging onto this thing and they're in the wilderness, there's nobody there, there's no webinar. So build that into your planning schedule as well. In terms of promotion, this also depends on your goals for the thing, who's actually attending, so it depends on your audience. As I mentioned in the first session, give it 3 months if this is your first one. But if you're really confident about what you want to do, then fine. But I wouldn't do any promotion that is shorter than a month. That said, if you're doing this on a regular, ongoing basis, then clearly your clients will know, your attendees will know, this thing happens every Monday morning or every Wednesday afternoon on the dot, 3 p.m., 10 a.m., whatever it is. You can get away with doing less and less promotion. But if you're just getting started with this, put the date in the diary 3 months from now, because you will spend the first month just faffing about. Okay, I promise you, because you've got a business to run in the meantime. But you'll soon get into the swing of it, and if you've got a team working on this in your business, you'll find it'll go a bit smoother than that as well. So your promotion, again, depends on whether this is a one-off or a regular event. You really want to market this, okay, particularly if it's your first one as well, an attention-grabbing title. Now, we're going to cover a bit more of this in the next session, but you do need, if you say, my main goal is I want 10 existing clients to attend this webinar, and maybe 3 local accountants or solicitors to attend this webinar. That's your goal, okay? And you want to make sure you get those 10 and those extra 3 people as well. So you will put in as much effort to get those 10 as if you were planning on having 400 people attending. You've got to just go for it because it will give you more confidence when 10 people actually register for it as well. You want to have dedicated emails. Certainly in the month leading up to the day, at least 3 emails, preferably 1 every single week. Don't worry that you might be overdoing the email marketing. As I said, people need to be regularly reminded about this thing to get them to turn up as well. Ideally, you should have a dedicated page on your website Maybe you promote it on your blog. If you have a blog, promote it on LinkedIn, all your social media and stuff like that as well. As somebody mentioned in the first session we did on this, if you're using Zoom, within the Zoom webinar module that you can add on, there is a promotional tool that's actually built in. So you actually create your own landing page with your own logo and branding and colors and so on and so forth. Ideally, everything that leaves your office should be promoting your webinar. So if this is an ongoing thing, include it in perhaps in your email signature or something like that. Yeah. Everything that leaves your office, on your out of office email, on your answer phone message, get it absolutely everywhere. Leave no stone unturned. So as part of your promotional, when you start to think about your marketing, brainstorm all the different ways that you can promote this. Now, if your webinar is designed for your existing clients, which is what probably most of you are going to do, then you've got a ready-made captive audience. You know, they're already on your email list. They won't object to you sending out additional emails to promote your webinar and so on and so forth. Now, clearly, some of them might want to unsubscribe to your emails, but you're not going to be barraging them with the stuff, you know, every single day. This is nice, polite, friendly, professional, short emails that go out once a week. Nothing wrong with that at all. No one's going to have any objections to that, but plan this stuff out in advance as well. Everything that leaves your office, maybe include an incentive to attend. You know, I know when it comes to seminars, you would argue that some people only attend a seminar because of the free lunch or the bacon roll or whatever it is, to be quite honest. Actually, in some respects, that's a bit of a myth. People don't go to financial planning seminars just because there's a free lunch. But what it does do is it adds to all the other reasons why they might want to attend. There's a kind of tipping point that people reach. If you send out a letter or you send out an email to somebody and say, hey, we're putting on our first webinar next month, we'd love you to come along. Now, some people will just ignore the email. Some people go, okay, that's interesting. But that email needs to include a variety of other things. Is the time of day appropriate for the recipient? And if it is, that will just nudge them towards their tipping point. Who are the speakers? If they're interested in who the speakers are, that will help nudge them towards the tipping point. Yeah. If it's on a day of the week that's convenient for them, that will help towards. If there's some freebie, maybe there's a free download or a free guide, that will nudge them towards the tipping point. Yeah. So everything you include in there, the benefits of attending, will nudge people to their tipping point where they go, yep, I'll attend that, or at least I'll register for that. It's the same on live seminars. It's the same on webinars as well. So there's a variety of things that you need to include in there. So maybe some sort of incentive to attend, clear and specific benefits of attending. As a result of attending this webinar, you will learn this, you will know this, you will have this myth busted. Yeah. Think of very clear and specific benefits for attending. Make it clear who the webinar is for. Now, again, if you're promoting this to your existing clients, then say this webinar will be a particular benefit to our existing clients because include that in there as well. Promote it on LinkedIn and social media. And one thing that really does nudge people towards their tipping point as well is who's the speaker. It's the one thing that people tend to forget most when they're promoting either a seminar or a webinar. Who's the speaker? Who are the speakers? And why they are credible, and why they are the people who are doing the presenting. Now, so that has the implication that you, the financial advisor, might not actually be the speaker. You might not want to do this. You might just want to hand this over to excuse me, to other people. But you certainly will want to top and tail the event and introduce people. But most financial planners, they will do the presentation themselves. And if you do all this pre-work and you do some practice sessions, you'll find this whole thing is much, much easier than it might appear on the surface. Okay. And remember, go back to what I was saying about that simple model, the review of the weekend newspapers. That is not exactly difficult to do, is it? You don't need any kind of scripts. You don't need any PowerPoint slides. It's really easy to do. So simple things like that. But people like to know who's doing the presenting. how they, a little bit about them, a little bit their story, how they became who they are today. Maybe it's a few things that influenced them in their lives, in their career. And you don't need to go over the top on this, but people, it does nudge people because people buy people. Yeah, you've heard me say that before. Registration. There are a variety of different ways that people can register for your event as well. So if you're doing it on Zoom, Zoom's got its own registration tool as well. You could just say to people, just drop us an email, send us an email, reply to this promotional email, consider yourself registered. Good old-fashioned letters, send people letters, maybe with a reply paid envelope. Yeah, remember them? Maybe people like to fill in reply paid slips. Good old-fashioned old school stuff. It works. Give us a ring and register. A dedicated web page with a little box for people to fill in. Don't forget the value stack that I mentioned in the first session. The value stack is basically a list of 3 or 4 things that, in addition to the webinar, you're also going to get this and this and this. And so you'll have to decide what it is that you've got, either intellectual property, intellectual capital, a freebie, something else, a download, half an hour of your time for free. Just think about what else can you give people in addition to the webinar, and that also helps to nudge people towards their tipping point where they go, yeah, I've got to sign up for this. Yeah, we've really got to make this, if not irresistible to them, make it extremely compelling. Yeah, so they go, you know, I'm already a client, I already get value from my financial planner, and now they're doing this. Why would I not want to book in for this? Yeah. As people start to register, it's always a good idea just to make a note. Where did people find you? How do they get back to you? How do they register? What sort of client are they? Are there any patterns that you're starting to see in the type of people that are signing up? Is it all people over the age of 80 who are signing up, or is it all people under the age of 50 who are signing up? Just monitor, just have a look at the data, because that will give you some really interesting insights as to who's turning up for this. And it will also help to inform you as to your presentation style. It might even just tweak the content that you were planning to give them as well. And as I mentioned earlier, always a good idea to personally thank people for registering. And in my book, that means phone them up. Yeah. Yes, if someone registers in any other way, yeah, you can send them an email and say, great, thanks for registering. You'll hear more from us as we approach the day. But what I would also do is pick the phone up. Hi, Mrs. Jones. Thank you so much for registering. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Just out of interest, what prompted you to register for this day? I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. So yeah, get some engagement going there. Ask them if they'd like to take part in some way, shape or form. Do they have a question that they might want to ask either now or in advance or on the day? Would they be interested in being a case study? Just get some engagement. But that personal thank you dramatically improves the likelihood that they'll actually turn up on the day. Yep. So that's registration. And as I said, a typical model for a financial advisor webinar, particularly in the UK, it will have a theme. Okay. And your theme will be determined around your expertise that you've got, the type of business that you're running, your goals and your objectives for the event as well. So it could be building wealth. Maybe you could have an ongoing theme of building wealth, or your theme could be based around retirement planning or lifestyle planning or equity release, or you'll know more than I do as to what theme, and they'll instinctively, the fact that you're watching this webinar at all, you will have probably already have some ideas as to the theme that you want to cover. I would make the thing free, but just keep at the back of your mind that in time you might want to start charging for these. Maybe you might want to start doing another webinar for specific types of clients that are maybe even more detailed, very much more niche. They get more personal interaction and access to you. There's no earthly reason why you can't charge for those as well. Monthly, I think, for most financial planners to start with, but I would strongly think about doing them weekly or bi-weekly as well. The more regularly you can do this, the more perceived value there is for your clients, and the greater likelihood that they will be referring more of the right people to you as well. I'd recommend you use Zoom 45 minutes absolute tops. And even if you've got a theme going on, you could still do some other stuff as well, like updates people are going on in the team. Joe here, who you've just taken on as a young apprentice or something like that, or some member of your team is doing their first ultra marathon. Just get something human in there as well. That works really well as well. News reviews we've talked about. An educational element. Now, it may well be that your entire theme is based around some element of personal finance education, but it's a nice thing to do. Maybe if you are doing this on a regular basis, have a section where you do a team update, a little section where you do a news review, that something's going on in the industry, something's going on in the world of personal finance, something teamy, something going on in the market. An educational element as well. So this is starting to feel a bit like almost like a news feel to it, like a TV show that is broken down into little chunks as well. So you could have myth busting of the month or myth bust of the week, where you take a personal finance concept that people have got preconceived ideas about, and you turn it around and show them actually what the truth is about it as well. I think the interview model could work really well for financial advisors as well. I've seen this done, and it's really easy to do. In terms of your planning, you don't have to worry too much about PowerPoint slides, and the financial planners who interview local people, or not just local business people, but local people, they interview clients as well. But you could potentially interview anybody, anywhere. If you look at Martin Bamford is doing with his YouTube channel and his podcast, he interviews lots and lots of people. He interviews authors, he interviews journalists, he interviews industry people, captains of industry, and it's a really, really good format, and it's a really easy format to do as well. And there's no earthly reason why you couldn't do that in the webinar format as well. Always have a call to action at the end of your webinar, even if that is to give us a testimonial, give us a review, give us feedback, make an appointment for a review. Always have a call to action as well, and always follow up the thing afterwards. And you need a whole follow-up process, which we're not going to cover in this particular one because we haven't got time to do that. Okay, on to your homework, and here it is. First thing, schedule that planning meeting. Remember I spoke about it right at the beginning. Now that meeting may well be with just yourself, but what I'm saying is put some time aside, stop all distractions, and start doing that planning. Really important that you do that planning meeting. Remember, getting your team together, thinking about your topics, all those things that we mentioned right at the beginning. And that will cover off your team, your goals, the topic, what you're going to talk about, and the technology platform that you're going to do. And finally, if you've not already done it, schedule the actual webinar date. Really important that you do that. Even if that webinar date is 3 months down the line, get it in the diary. If you don't get something in the diary, it's not going to happen. You've got the day job to deal with in the meantime, but get that date in the diary. Follow the process that I've been talking about today, and let's make this thing happen. Really important. I can't stress that enough, that you get a date in the diary, because if you're thinking, okay, this has been useful stuff, Phil, thanks very much. Maybe I'll do it next year. I promise you it's not going to happen. So get a date in the diary. You can always change the date, but get a date in the diary and start that planning as soon as you possibly can. So that's it for today. Thank you very much indeed. Hope you found it useful. And if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. You know where to find me, and we'll see you on the next session. Thanks a lot.